We have now approached our final segment of today's episode, and this is Chit Chat with Manoj. Chit Chat with Manoj is an informative feature of the Capital Forum. It is highly looked upon and highly awaited every fortnight. Chit Chat with Manoj is moderated here by Mr. Manoj Singh, who is the CEO of Caesar Productions. This week, Mr. Manoj Singh looks into the work culture in the United States versus motherland India. His guest is an IT consultant by the name of Mr. Ankur Mishra. Let's join these two gentlemen in their discussion.
Welcome to Chit Chat. I'm Manoj Singh. Hello, Adab, Namaste. Today we have an interesting topic and very near and dear to even me because I'm in the IT sector. We'll talk about work cultural differences between India and US. And joining me for this discussion today is Ankur Mishra, who was born and brought up in US, and he got a chance to go and work in India for a few years. He is an IT consultant with Tata Consultancy Services. Welcome, Ankur.
Hi,
thanks.
Thank you.
So in America, we know normally these are all standards that we work for normally from 8 to 5. It's 40 hours a week, and it's very professional, and there is honor system. And in India, normally, just lately also I noticed when I was in Mumbai that office starts late around 9 or 10. And people tend to stay also late until 6, and in our sector, IT, maybe even later than that, 8 or 9. And even but in India, for overtime, a lot of times you don't get paid. Now, there are some differences, although things have improved in India because of outsourcing and people going back and forth between America and India. So even they have started getting Saturday and Sundays off. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about our experiences. Let's hear from Ankur. What was so? First question to Ankur. Now you were brought up in US, so you saw the work culture here, and then you went to India and got a chance to work there. What were some of the challenges, and what was some of the pros and cons?
Well, I'll start with the pros and cons. Going there, the experience I got was a lot richer than what I was doing here. So I got automatically catapulted into some manager role. But the challenge is, to start with, in America, we have a wonderful infrastructure. There, getting around and transportation is very difficult. There's seas of people everywhere. So that's one thing, that getting to the work late is a culture in India. Definitely people do tend to come late, but it's due to a variety of reasons. And they stay late because they tend to get into a zone. I mean, it's a different atmosphere, whereas here it is pretty much by the book, 9 to 5, people come in and leave at 5, and there they do come in later and they leave later. But and that was challenging to adapt to, but once you adapt to it, I think you feel it. I mean, there's a lot of different factors involved also. Like in India, there's a big private sector. In Bombay, where I was, there's private sector and there's public sector. And I guess it does trickle down from the public sector. And public sector has a very different work culture than the private sector. And if you're called for a meeting, then you have to be on time, regardless where you are. I mean, if a meeting starts at 9 o'clock, you have to be there at 9. Even though the client that you're going for may not start the meeting until 10 or 11. And that's why I think the public sector and private sector are very different. And as Manoj just said, it's growing. I mean, because of the outsourcing, and it's becoming very global. So these kind of environments and this professionalism with this timing also is being adapted to and being changed. Even in India, developers have to work on American hours. Like a lot of these outsourced centers, they're working throughout the night. And it's the IT population is just growing exponentially every day in India. And it's good to see, but there are definitely very big differences as far as the work culture goes.
Yeah, so I grew up in India, came here for my studies, and then got to work here. And I also got a chance of doing expat, which is some TDY opportunities we call. Got to work in South Asia a lot, including India. I was in Jakarta, Indonesia, Japan. Generally in South Asia, especially I noticed in Indonesia and India, the work culture was pretty same. Um, in US, like I talked about, we have honor system. There's a work-life balance, and normally work is work, and after work, after 5 or on the weekends, you don't tend to bother people. But in India, it's even at the work place, people are very personal. They would not hesitate in asking you a very personal question. But over here they don't. And also there is a lot more micromanagement in India. I think that comes with culture. I guess there's lack of trust, but although we work in America only 8 hours, but there's very high productivity, and that's due to very good infrastructure and work ethics. Um, and uh, and I think in India, people do stay late, especially in the lower ranks, and that is mostly to show the upper management that they work hard. Might not be that they are really working those hours. They take a lot of frequent breaks for tea or chai, and uh, and uh, and upper management is treated differently, even in the benefits package. And you know how hierarchical it is. Like most of the major decisions are come top down. And in a lot of cases, employer also ignore labor laws. So did you find any observation that was there any bias at the workplace, that you were coming from America and you might be, thinking you're a smart geek, and we did you feel that way, or what, or how were the colleagues?
Yeah, I think definitely initially, and also when I start talking, I mean, usually all the meetings do take place in English. And the work environment is all in English. Of course, some people go into their dialects, whether it's Tamil or mainly Hindi. I mean, but mainly every environment takes place in English. And because I have an American accent, you can call it, not an Indian American accent. So when I open my mouth, people do get shocked. They say, "You are from America." They get confused. I mean, my story is very different from most. Usually people from India are coming to America to work. I went from America to go to India to work. So it was very different there. And that was people, at the end of the day, what you actually speak is what is valued. So I think even though that accent was shocking, it didn't really matter in the long run, because, I mean, I guess it's what you output is what matters. And that's an interesting topic when you talk about this managers versus, like, maybe the freshers, as they call them, the newer guys who are coming and doing a purely technical role. They stay late, and they work in teams. It's kind of community oriented, and the managers do get treated differently. Especially, that also depends on the client also. But I worked for a public sector bank, State Bank of India, for a couple years as a client, and so I saw internally within TCS, the managing partners and all that do manage the relationship, and the way their organization worked versus inside of the SBI, their organization worked. And then I also worked on a client, Aditya Birla, who's a private company. And so it's very factor-wise on the client itself, but I think it's an interesting point. The public sector, I think, is now changing because of what's going on in India with the new Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, and other things. So there's a lot of change going on in the public sector. And I think with India being 1 billion plus people in a small area, it's whatever the government does is really on the scale of what the majority of the public will do. Even though the IT industry is growing exponentially, it's a niche still, as when you compare it to the overall population of India. So it's changing. I think everything in India is changing, and this IT industry is really booming, and it's very global. So the work-life balance is something that in India, it's kind of complicated to understand, even though these guys are working late. The thing I enjoyed in India, I think we'll get to that in the next
Yes,
question.
correct. Yeah. So on the positive note, I have, like I said, I worked in South Asia and several countries, Japan, but I did stay in Indonesia for a while and also in India. And one of the things I did enjoy was, of course, having a driver, having a maid service, and also in my office, I would just press a button and someone would then bring me coffee or tea in a nice crockery. Do you miss having a personal help, and or would you rather prefer to do your own chores? I mean, there's a pros and cons to that. I know when the servant doesn't show up in India, there's a lot of hue and cry.
So there's one thing showing up, and another thing is trusting. But the service is probably one of the best things about India that I experienced. I mean, having a driver and a maid who comes every day and does all the chores and paying peanuts for this service, and also like in the office itself, you have somebody who will go get you chai and these things. I mean, that service. And when we talk about work-life balance, people have kids. I mean, in Bombay especially, they're working, but their parents are at home, and on top of that, they have a maid at home who looks over the children. Now, of course, it's not ideal in a family situation, but that work-life balance through this service that is there in India was an excellent thing.
So I work here in US and I'm in IT, like I said. So in all big organizations, we have people coming from India over here on H1 visas, and most of our development team is from India, and most of them are also from South. And it just so happens. So I talked to them as well, and to get their perspective. And they normally, when they come here, they have a short-term sort of planning. They just want to come here. They're very much Indian at home. They watch only Indian televisions, Indian movies, Indian food, and they feel like they will save the money and one day go back. Although, of course, a lot of times that changes after they have for 8, 9, 10 years. Now, coming back to asking you, Ankur, what would be an ideal workplace for you, or do you see in India light at the end of the tunnel? I think you talked about it, that the new government and now even the public sector is becoming a lot more conscious and professional. I hope so, and then we all are looking forward to changes in India. And at workplace, the private sector is becoming like America. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the private sector is definitely becoming more like that. Like you said, the new prime minister and government, we'll see what happens, but it looks very promising. As Narendra Modi did 900 holographic interviews across the nation, very techno-savvy guy, and very enforcing these things. So, like I said, the India population in itself is such a big thing. It'll reflect from the government structure. In the past, I think it's been a little different, and we'll see what happens in the future coming. And as far as the H-1B visas goes, I do see these people in India, and they come here as H-1 guys, and you have the people in America working, and they tend to stay late, and they do go home and they cook their food, and they're very much Indian, and they forget about the service they had in India. They just jump into being Indian in America. It's a very unique thing to see.
So that is it for today. I think hopefully we got some new perspectives, and we can talk about this topic more because, like I said, it's very near and dear to us, but our time is off for today. Thank you all. Hopefully you all are enjoying this beautiful spring weather, and soon we'll see summer. Thank you. Goodbye. Like I say all the time, life is short. Have fun and no regrets.